like this.
Do you have any recollection of the discussion at this meeting as to how to increase IE market share?
No.
Next page refers to another response is differentiate through Windows integration. Do you recall any aspect of the discussion on this subject?
No.
Do you recall, strike the question. Is it correct that the Netscape browser was one of the principal means through which the Java virtual machine was distributed?
I don't know what you mean was distributed. Certainly the Java virtual machine has the ability to be distributed with any application over the internet. So just like all software on the internet, distribution is wide open.
Did you form any judgment yourself as to whether the Netscape browser was the major distribution vehicle for the Java virtual machine?
Well, I don't know what you mean, the Java virtual machine. Understand that many different companies have Java virtual machines. Netscape had one that was different than the one that Sun had, which is different than ours, which is different than HP's, which was different than IBM's, which is different than Nobel's. So you'll have to be more specific. But in terms of distributing those things, they're out there on the internet, easy to get.
Yeah. Mark is Exhibit 349, an email from Paul Moritz to Mr. Gates and others, dated July 14, 1997.
I had a copy of it, didn't you?
To save time, I'll tell you, I'm going to ask you just, about the very first email here from Mr. Nutz to Mr. Dunny and yourself and others. And in particular, where he says, quote, if we look further at Java/JFC being our major threat, then Netscape is a major distribution vehicle. You see that?
I see it.
What does JFC refer to here, if you know?
Well, as I said, it's all about runtime APIs, and JFC was the term for what Netscape was putting out as a set of runtime APIs, which was different than what Sun was putting out, but was their Netscape 1.
Do you have any understanding as to what Mr. Moritz meant here when he referred to Netscape as the major distribution vehicle?
Well, Netscape had some unique APIs, and one of the ways they were distributing it was through their software products, including the browser.
Did you understand that in Mr. Moritz's view, Netscape was the principal means by which people were acquiring the Java virtual machine?
Well, you actually started these questions asking about Sun's virtual machine, and I explained to you that Netscape's is different. So I'm not sure what you're referring to now.
What did you understand, sir, by Mr. Moritz's reference to being the major distribution vehicle. Got that. When Mr. Moritz said the Netscape is a major distribution vehicle, what did you understand him to be saying a vehicle for?
The Netscape runtime bits, not Sun's virtual machine. And it says JFC there, so obviously it's not Sun.
Okay, I'd like to mark it as Exhibit 340, 350. Email from Mr. Slivka to various people dated June 12, 1997. The second email on the first page here is from Chris Jones, and it says, here's a final copy of a memo we sent to Bill G. for Think Week about what we should do to get 30% browser share. Do you recall reviewing the attachment as part of your 1995 Think Week?
I didn't review it.
No? What were Mr. Jones' responsibilities in 1995?
Good question.
Do you recall?
No. Might have worked for Moritz.
I'd like to take a short break now. Do you want to stop for lunch now or proceed?
Lunch is here behind you, but
I guess take a lunch.
probably as good a time as any. There's another room that has some telephones that you all don't have enough phones here, 2,000.
Okay, the time is 12:04 p.m. We are going off the record.
You'll be
The time is 12:54. We are going back on the record.
In or about June 1995, Mr. Gates, did you become involved in the planning for some meetings with Netscape?
No.
I'd like to mark as Exhibit 352, 351. These days I'll get it right. I'd like to mark as Exhibit 351 an email chain appears to have been produced from Mr. Gates's file. Mr. Gates, Exhibit 351 is a series of emails that relate to some meetings with Netscape. And I'm going to start my questioning from the earliest one chronologically, which is at the back of the group of emails here. So I think to save time, it might make sense for you to look seriatim at the ones I'm going to ask you about.
Seriatim?
Yeah, in other words, my first questions are going to be about the email dated June 1st, 1995.
June what?
June 1, 1995, at the back of this package. So I'm suggesting before I ask you questions about a particular email, you review that, and then when I turn to the next email, you can review that one. If you like to do them all together, it's up to you. I'm just trying to save some time here.
What does seriatim mean? Serially?
Correct, one after the other.
But does it mean more than serially?
I don't want to necessarily complicate it. I'm going to ask you about one email at a time. And I'll point out to you the one I'm going to ask you about.
Okay.
And my suggestion is you read that one first, and then I'll ask you about that. And then when I turn to the next one, I'll let you know, and you can look at that one. But if you want to look at all of them together, you're welcome to do that. So if you proceed as I suggest, seriatim or serially, whatever the case may be, what I'm going to do is ask you first about the email that appears on what's page 100 of the document here.
Mr. Houck, one question for you, if you know. Did we produce these to you stapled like this, or is this a collection that...
Yes, actually, that's a question I have for you. I'm going to turn it back at you. This was produced serially, as you'll see by the production number. They're consecutive numbers, but the pages at the bottom are not consecutive. And I was going to ask you if you knew why that was, if there were some documents or pages that were part of a group of memoranda or email that was not produced to us. You'll see with our consecutive production numbers. So if you could take that under advisement and let me know what the answer is, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I certainly don't know the answer sitting here now. Which pages are we talking about that are you talking about the Bates numbering or something else?
The Bates numbering is consecutive, but
Okay.
the pages applied, page numbers applied by Microsoft at the bottom are not consecutive. So it looks like these are part of a larger document. And my question is if there are pages missing that were not produced to us.
Okay, those page numbers, just FYI, are a funny thing to see down there. I'm not sure even what those refer to, but we'll try to figure it out.
Thank you. Okay, the email I want to ask you about first, Mr. Gates, is dated June 1st, 1995, and the very top portion indicates that the bottom portion is being sent to you for your information by Paul Moritz, and the bottom portion is an email from Thomas Reardon, dated June 1st, 1995, on the subject of working with Netscape. Do you recall receiving this memorandum or email?
Email, no.
I apologize for use of my old-fashioned terminology. I'll try to remember using email. You don't recall receiving this email?
No.
The email states that Dan and Barb and I met late yesterday to review our recent discussions with Netscape and form our next two action items. Dan is meeting with Jim Barksdale, their CEO, shortly. Do you understand the reference to Dan to be a reference to Dan Rosen?
Probably.
And is the reference to Barb a reference to Barbara Fox?
I mean, you could ask Thomas. Probably.
Did you have any understanding, sir?
Based on I've never spoken to Thomas about this. I don't remember seeing the email.
Do you recall speaking to anyone about the meeting referred to here between Dan Rosen and Jim Barksdale?
No.
The email goes on to list working goals. Which are one, launch STT, our electronic payment protocol, get STT presence on the internet. Two, move Netscape out of the Win32 internet client area. Three, avoid cold or hot war with Netscape. Keep them from sabotaging our platform evolution. Do you understand the reference to Win32 internet client, Arena, to be a reference to Windows 95?
No,
What do you understand to be a reference to?
Win32,
What, can you describe what that is?
32-bit Windows.
Is Windows 95 a 32-bit Windows product?
It's one of them.
Were there any other 32-bit products in development in June 1995?
Certainly.
Which ones?
Windows NT,
Do you know whether Mr. Reardon was referring to Windows NT and Windows 30 and Windows 95, or one or the other?
Win32 is a term that refers to all the 32-bit platforms.
As I understand your testimony, that the 32-bit platforms under development in June of 1995 were Windows NT and Windows 95. Is that correct?
The Windows NT was shipping, and there was a new version that was under development.
And Windows 95 was in development at this time?
Certainly.
In the portion of the email denominated number 2, which is move Netscape out of Win32/Win95, avoid battling them in the next year, there appears the following statement in the second paragraph, quote, they appear to be moving fast to establish themselves in the value-add app business by leveraging Netscape itself as a platform. Do you recall whether you agreed that that's what Netscape was doing back in June 95?
At this time, I had no sense of what Netscape was doing.
The next email I want to ask you about is on page 231 of the document. And it's an email from Paul Moritz to various people, including yourself, regarding the Netscape meeting, and it's dated June 5, 1995.
How do you find that?
It was surprisingly the opposite
Go
direction.
by base numbers, Mike.
Yeah, if you just use those numbers are sequential.
9594.
Okay.
237. Okay.
No. Which one?
231, page 231.
Oh, 231.
This is base number 594.
Okay.
I'll take your eminent counsel's suggestion and refer to by base number. A little easier. Here, Mr. Moritz reports that he did not get the impression from the meeting he had that Netscape was ready for a broad strategic relationship. Do you see that?
Do you think that refers to a meeting he had? I don't think so.
Let me refer you to page 596, page number 596.
Okay.
It's an email of the same date, and it says attached is my summary of the meeting that Nathan, Paul, and I had with Jim Barksdale of Netscape. You understand the reference to Paul to be a reference to Paul Moritz?
Or maybe he was talking about a meeting he had.
Do you have any recollection of discussing Mr. Moritz's impression of his meeting with Netscape?
I didn't think Paul had met with Netscape.
So you have no present recollection of discussing with Mr. Moritz his views based on the meeting he had with Mr. Barksdale in about the early part of June 1995?
No.
let me refer you next to Bates number page 585. And this is an email to you and others from Dan Rosen regarding a Netscape meeting, and the date of the email is June 22, 1995. Page 585, page number. You got it? You want to look at the email first before I ask you some questions, or you want me to proceed?
Go ahead.
Do you recall getting this particular email?
No, I recall getting this email from Brad Silverberg on 584, but not this one from Dan.
You have no reason to believe you didn't get it, is that correct?
That's right.
Do you
I'm
understand?
still confused if it actually was enclosed in the other one or not. It
Right.
may, from the way it's printed out, it may have been. And I do, although my name is right, I don't remember getting that one. I do remember getting this one, which it may also be an enclosure to.
Right. Do you understand this to be Mr. Rosen's report on a meeting he had on June 21st, 1995 with Netscape executives?
It looks like it. The thing I recall is the Reardon,
Right.
what he calls his perspective that Brad sent to me.
Right. Did you understand that Mr. Reardon had a somewhat different perspective on the meeting than Mr. Rosen had?
Yes.
Who was the senior Microsoft executive at the June 21st meeting?
There were no senior executives at that meeting.
Who was the most senior of the people there?
You'd have to tell me who was at the meeting. I have no idea who was at the meeting.
Do you understand that Dan Rosen was at the meeting?
Apparently from this email, yes.
Did you understand that Tom Reardon was at the meeting?
From his email, yes.
Did you understand that Jim Allard was at the meeting?
Jim who?
Allard.
J. Allard?
Jay Allard, yeah.
I don't know.
How about Chris Jones?
I don't know. Does one of these list who was at the meeting?
Let me just ask you, do you have any recollection as you sit here as to who you were told attended the meeting on behalf of Microsoft? Other than Mr. Reardon?
Can I have a question in the back?
Let me just ask you if you have any recollection as you sit here as to who you were told attended the meeting on behalf of Microsoft other than Mr. Reardon?
Objection Foundation.
I'm not sure what you mean told.
Were you informed, Mr. Gates, who attended the meeting on behalf of Microsoft?
I don't think so.
Do you have any understanding as you sit here today who attended that meeting on behalf of Microsoft?
Well, the last page of the thing you gave me on 599 might relate to that, but I don't have any prior knowledge about it.
The email from Mr. Rosen on the first page says, quote, our goals going into the meeting were in priority order. 1, establish Microsoft ownership of the Internet Client platform for Win95. 2, have Netscape add value to the NT server and back office platform above our stuff, making it the preferred Internet solution. 3, have Netscape preferentially support Microsoft authoring tools / solutions and support our reviewers. And 4, send a message to the marketplace that Netscape and Microsoft were cooperating on Internet issues. recall discussing these goals with any of the Microsoft people who attended the meeting in advance of the meeting?
No.
The next page of the email says, Chris Jones summed up the purpose nicely. Quote, we need to understand if you will adopt our platform and build on top of it, or if you are going to compete with us on the platform level, close quote. Did you understand that was a principal purpose of Microsoft in attending this meeting with Netscape?
Objection.
No, it says in the Rosen memo, the purpose of the meeting was to scope out specific areas that a relationship between the two companies might take, and to set in place a process to either conclude a strategic relationship or go our separate ways.
Do you have any present recollection as you sit here as to what the purpose of the Microsoft executives was in attending the meeting?
Well, there were no Microsoft executives in the meeting.
You don't consider Mr. Rosen a Microsoft executive?
No, inside Microsoft, I don't know about other companies, but the VPs are called executives, and the non-VPs are called non-executives. And there were no executives at that meeting.
Let me rephrase the question. Do you have any understanding as you sit here today as to what the purpose was of the Microsoft employees who attended the meeting with Netscape on June 21st, 1995?
I can read to you
And I want you to-
from the stuff you've
I don't want
given
you to
me
read-
here.
Just read. I'm asking for your present recollection if you have one, and I can read the document myself.
I don't know what you mean by present recollection.
If you have any, you sit here today, do you have any recollection as to what your understanding was back in June 1995 as to the principal purpose of the Microsoft employees in the meeting with Netscape?
I wasn't involved in setting up the meeting, so I can see what Reardon said here.
Okay.
I can see what Rosen said here. You've read something that purports to be something that Jones said.
As we discussed before, did you understand that Mr. Reardon and Mr. Rosen had different perspectives on the meeting?
Well, I got some email from Brad Silverberg after the meeting that showed that Reardon seemed to have a more realistic view of what was going on.
Did you share his view?
Objection.
I had no view whatsoever.
When you said Reardon had a more realistic view of the meeting, can you explain what you meant?
The Reardon's mail says, maybe I'm being a dick, but there's no deal here. If we are smart, deft, and engaged at the right levels, we have a chance to cooperate on a few of these smaller things. So, usually if you have two people that go to a meeting, and one comes back and says, it looks great, and the other comes back and says it doesn't look good, my business experience is the person who says that it doesn't look good is probably the one who has the most accurate view of the meeting. Particularly when you're dealing with Thomas Reardon and Dan Rosen.
So you thought that Reardon's view of how the meeting went was likely the more accurate one?
In the sense that it didn't look like much would come out of it, yes.
Do you recall, as you sit here today, apart from just reading these emails, anything that was reported back to you by any of the participants from Microsoft at this June 21st meeting?
Well, I think somewhere about this time somebody said to me that asked if it made sense for us to consider investing in Netscape, and I said that didn't make sense to me. I didn't see that as something that made sense.
Do you recall who said that to you?
Would have been probably suggested in a piece of email from Dan, I think.
Do you recall when you got that suggestion, whether it was before or after the meeting?
Oh, it would have been after the meeting.
Do you recall anything else that anyone told you back in June '95 about the meeting?
No.
Did you personally devote time, Mr. Gates, to studying Netscape and trying to determine what their sources of revenue were?
In what time frame are we talking about?
Do you recall doing that at all?
I personally didn't make any study of it, but I know that in late '95, when we reviewed a bunch of different competitors, one of those was Netscape, and there was some revenue analysis done as part of that.
Do you recall an employee at Microsoft by the name of Amir Nehru?
I know Amar.